Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session of Let Us Talk It Youth series. And we are extremely glad that we are with our youth who are passionate about this particular webinars that we do. And we hope that all of you who are joining in on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, you also get motivated. We talk about a certain topic, but we hope that the result or the impact that it has on youth are long term. So today's topic is very much absolutely a one that is going right now, as recent as can be as today. So we have the elections, we had the results today. So we will be talking, our youth will be talking about outcome of the US elections and what it means and how it will affect us. Democracy is based upon the conviction that there are extraordinary possibilities in ordinary people, and that's what our youth are here to see, find, and discuss. And for the panelists, we have Abhi, a seventh grader, Hasni, seventh grader, Mahati, seventh grader, Anvita, fifth grader, Siri, ninth grader, and for the first time, we have Vedant. Uh, and then we have Medha, whose brainchild is the topic itself. She's very passionate, and she has been working hard to put things together. She will be the moderator and one of the panelists. Over to you, Medha. All the best.
Thank you, Auntie. So the past couple of days have been quite exciting, and it was a very close race with the historical number of voters. But just a couple hours ago, we found out that Joe Biden is going to be our next president. And before we go any further, I want to say Let Us Talk It is a nonpartisan forum. So no matter what your viewpoint is or your thoughts are, if you take away just one thing from today's webinar, we hope that it is this. Now more than ever, it's important to cast aside the idea of Republican/Democrat and stay united as the United States of America and act in the best interest of our country. So in today's presentation, we'll be covering Biden's policies on key issues that we as teens felt need to be discussed as we step into a new term with a new president. And we'll begin today by introducing ourselves and helping you get to know your panelists. Then cover the Biden-Harris administration stance on different topics in detail, and finally end with an interactions and Q&A session, during which we would really appreciate it if you could submit any questions you have either in the YouTube live chat, in the Zoom, or in the Facebook chat. And with that, let's get started. So first, we'll begin by introducing ourselves.
Hi everyone, my name is Hasni and I'm a 7th grader at Ruther Middle School in Michigan. And some things I enjoy doing are playing tennis, doing kuchipudi dance, and hanging out with friends.
Hello everyone, my name is Vedant. I am a 10th grader at Washington International High School, and I enjoy playing tennis and listening to and singing music.
Hi everybody, my name is Siri and I'm a freshman at Lambert High School in Georgia. And in my free time, I like singing, dancing, and reading.
So I think we'll move on for now because Abhi seems to be having some technical issues. We'll go on to the next panelist.
Hi guys, my name is Mahadi and I am a 7th grader in Michigan, and some things I like doing are painting and reading.
Hi, my name is Anvita. I'm a 5th grader, and some of the things I like doing are biking and reading.
Hi everyone, I'm Medha. I'm a junior in Virginia, and some things I like doing in my free time are reading, spending time with my family, and spending time with my dog. So now that you've gotten to know your panelists for today, we'll move on to covering specific policies listed in Biden's campaign and what they mean for us as American citizens, but also more specifically as teens.
So I'm going to be talking about climate change first. So Biden says that climate change is a major global threat. He pledges to drastically reduce carbon emissions and launch major products to help U.S. industries rely less on fossil fuels or run entirely on renewable energy, such as wind or solar power. I think that this is a safe way to reduce carbon emissions, and it's good to rely less on fossil fuels and more on renewable power. Why I think that is because they are clean energy sources that are non-pollutant, produce minimal or no waste products, and don't contribute to global warming, which is great news for the environment. They're low maintenance energy sources, and renewable energy facilities tend to require less maintenance than traditional generators.
Okay, so on the topic of abortion, Joe Biden supports keeping abortions legal. Biden implied that they will be removing the Supreme Court nominee who is actually supportive of making abortions illegal. He wants to pass a federal law that protects the woman's rights to have an abortion. Branching out from the healthcare policy, Biden also wants to influence the Affordable Care Act to cover abortions. The president speaks a lot about reproductive rights, often about how they are a constitutional right as well. Now, what does this exactly mean for us? I don't think this would affect us, as in the webinar panelists, but maybe our parents or friends. It would certainly be easier for them to get a legal abortion, and people who have been abused or unstable have support to get them through it. And to sum it up, abortions can have a positive impact on a woman's physical and emotional well-being, and legalizing them will have a great outcome for the US.
Thank you, Mahati. I actually missed asking it for the last slide, climate change. But if any of the panelists have anything to add for this topic specifically, please step in.
So personally, I think that this could affect a lot of teens because one of the main things that's hurting teens nowadays is teen parenthood, and that stops them from getting a good education and stops them from actually like getting a lot of careers or like a lot of career paths, and it looks really bad on their resumes, etc. And so this will make sure that teens still have the opportunity, even though they might have made a few mistakes in their past that they shouldn't have. And also, it protects women's health because a lot of times, the logic behind this is that if abortion is illegal, if people really need it, they're still going to get it. And illegal abortion is one of the main causes of maternal like mortality. So if we have safe legal abortion, it's going to save many women's lives.
All right, thank you, Mahati, and thank you, Abhi. You guys made some really great points, and also thank you, Hasani, for what you explained about climate change. And now moving on to the coronavirus response.
Yeah, so as we all know, the coronavirus pandemic has been devastating the entire world for the last year. And this election has been a way for people to choose who they think will lead us out of this pandemic. And so, as the current president elect Joe Biden has many policies that relate to the pandemic and its effects. So, today I want to discuss how these policies specifically affect the youth. So, firstly, Joe Biden has stated that his number one priority after becoming president is tackling the coronavirus. And his plan includes doubling testing sites, investing in new testing technology, and drastically increasing contact tracing. But what does this mean for us? And how will his plans help the youth specifically? Well, obviously, increased testing means faster treatment of the disease, and not only for the youth, but for everybody. But at the same time, this will help youth get back to a sense of normalcy. For example, my school's football team had their season cut short because one member of their team had coronavirus. And so they could have found out about that case earlier and taken steps to reduce the risk of transmission faster. and potentially could have resumed their season if there wasn't a delay in testing. So I believe that doubling testing sites will help sports teams like these, but will also help reopen schools faster and will help students resume their normal social lives. In addition to testing, Biden has also laid out a plan specifically to reopen and help schools. He plans to task the CDC with releasing criteria to local governments, which can guide these local school districts' decisions on when and how to reopen schools. Previously, though, these school districts were left to decide on their own on when and how to reopen their schools. And this personally has caused a lot of confusion for students and families during the school year. For example, my school first told us when they want my school first told us that would be learning virtually, and then they proposed a hybrid plan, but then they switched back to virtual school. So this sort of back and forth decision making has caused a lot of confusion for families and students like me. However, creating a national reopening guidelines like these will hopefully reduce the confusion and make these decisions more streamlined for the youth.
Thank you, Vedant. Those were some really interesting points. And I especially liked how you connected it all to us, especially when you got to schools and streamlining it nationwide so that it's a lot easier for both students and parents when it comes to education in this time. Next, we'll be talking about healthcare.
So Biden is he believes in a lot of personal freedom, which is a very liberal like ideology. And part of one of the freedoms in the Constitution that's guaranteed is the freedom to life. And a big part of that is healthcare. So essentially, he wants to reduce the price. Wait a second. Sorry. I'm getting yeah. So he wants to decrease prices for healthcare, and also what he wants to do is expand Obamacare and make sure more coverage is guaranteed for every single American. Also, what he wants to do is create a single-payer healthcare system where the government and a quasi-governmental agency pays for every single American's healthcare. And he wants to make sure that drug prices and the price of insulin in particular is also reduced. Essentially, he wants to make sure every single American can get access to healthcare without
Thank you, Abby. I think you might have gotten a little bit cut off there at the end, but those were some really important points. So thank you. Next, we'll be moving on to the Biden-Harris administration's foreign policy, specifically global action, and City will be talking about this.
I think Biden's foreign policy can be summarized in the quote that he said. And he said, "I will take immediate steps to renew U.S. democracy and alliances to protect United States' economic future and once more have America lead the world." He intends to restore America's leadership abroad. Biden says that he will rally the world to meet common challenges, from climate change, nuclear proliferation, cyber warfare, migration, and more. Biden will lead the world in these issues. He will strengthen our democracy and set an example for the world and restore moral leadership. He will uplift human rights and democracy around the world. Also, he wants to build security and partnership with Central American countries. Instead of insulting and demonizing immigrants, Biden will address the factors that cause them to leave their countries. He will commit to addressing corruption, poverty reduction, economic development in order to secure our nation. Also, he will address the African diaspora community, which is one of the most diverse communities in America. He will create opportunities, support families, and encourage education so they are able to contribute to America's growth and prosperity. Although these policies might not greatly affect the everyday person in a significant way, they will allow America to retain its position as a global leader and protect its diverse communities. Biden plans to secure our nation as a nation of immigrants. He will undo Trump's tough policies on immigration, and he will make sure that families are not separated at the border, but instead welcomed into the community. Immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers alike. He will enforce effective border screening and implement a fair and humane immigration system.
Thank you, City. You explained actually in a lot of detail some very important points about Biden's stance on foreign policy, both globally and immigration. So now we'll be moving on to the economy.
So, Biden's long term plan for strengthening the economy involves major building projects. He supports increasing the federal minimum wage from $7.25 per hour to $15 per hour. He also supports increasing taxes on wealthy Americans and corporations. I think that increasing the minimum wage is good and bad at the same time. Some positive outcomes of it would be that it boosts the earnings of a family and it would help make the economy grow. Some negative outcomes of raising the minimum wage would be fewer hirings because they have to pay the employees more money, so it wouldn't work as good. Also, the competition would intensify because more people would want those job positions as the minimum wage would be increased.
Also, what Biden wants to do is that he's going to create new jobs and jumpstart the American economy. This is also related to climate, as in his Green New Deal, he wants to create several new jobs in the solar industry and other renewable industries. And that's, although that may cut down on the coal and oil sector, it creates a whole other sector which reduces American dependency on foreign companies and foreign banks.
Thank you, Hasni and Abi. Again, you guys went into lots of interesting points on what the Biden administration believes, what their policies are in the economy and how it affects us.
I'm going to be talking about racial equity and police reform. So the Biden-Harris administration does support racial equity. Like Biden pledges to support the minority-owned small businesses, such as business owned by underprivileged people. And he also supports, they're a strong supporter toward the Black Lives Matter movement. And on his website, he states that he will support small businesses owned by Black Americans. And Kamala Harris, since she is now our new vice president, Kamala Harris also participated in the protests in Washington, D.C. toward the BLM movement after the coming days of George Floyd's death. They stated as one of their policies, they would create a strong, inclusive economy, including minorities such as Asian Americans, tribal Americans, and Pacific Islanders. So they would really incorporate all cultures into the economy and make it better.
Thank you, Anvita. I especially loved how you mentioned what the Biden-Harris administration, Kamala Harris specifically, has already done to further racial equity, such as participating in the protests against police brutality after George Floyd's death. Next, we'll be moving on to gun control, which Mahati will be speaking about.
All right, so gun control is a very serious matter in the United States. There have been many incidents with gun violence, which has influenced our current president. Biden will be mostly revolving around the gun sales and ownership. He has made it clear that there will be background checks on gun buyers, and there will be a guaranteed registry for firearms to prevent the danger of mass shootings. They will also be ending the online sale of ammunition and firearms and will be closing all loopholes. For us, under Biden's policy, hopefully we will be more safer and more stricter when it comes to guns. There will be a decrease in mass shootings, and this is all very important because we want our country to be safe.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mahati. Those were some really important points, especially when you said specific things that Biden has listed in his campaign to maybe not ban guns entirely, but definitely put control and make it more safe in schools and decrease mass shootings. Next, we have Abi talking about the Biden policy stance on law and justice.
So there are two parts to this. One is like the criminal justice reform, which is tied in with racial equity, and the other one is like how the government is structured. So the first one I'll talk about is government structure. So most likely, due to the 6-3 conservative to liberal majority, Biden will most likely pack the federal courts and the Supreme Court. And although that seem like unlikely now with the Republican majority Senate, it's still possible with like faithless like electors in the Republican Party. Also, if he does have a Democratic Senate, he plans on ending the filibuster. So, in the past, like when he was vice president during Obama, a lot of the filibuster was used a lot by the Republican Party, mostly by Mitch McConnell, in order to stop like voting on certain things. Like he blocked the nomination of several different Supreme Court judges, like Merrick Garland is the most famous one. Also, Biden plans on introducing 2 new states, Puerto Rico and DC, as both of them are taxed without being represented, and it's also a very common liberal thing to want both of them to be states. Um, if there's a Republican Senate, which is becoming more and more likely, like Obama, he probably will use a lot of executive orders, which will be looked upon with both positive and negative effect, because that increases bureaucracy and government regulation, which was not voted by the American people, but it also makes sure that America's safer. Also, tying into criminal justice reform, he plans on ending mandatory minimums and the death penalty, which have disproportionately affected Black youth and Hispanic youth. And also, he plans on legalizing marijuana, which is a very controversial topic. However, it also has like disproportionately incarcerated and led to the incarceration of a lot of Black youth and Latinx youth.
Thank you, Abby. Those were a lot of interesting points that Biden has specifically stated he will do. And in the Q&A as well, if you have any questions on any further questions on how it directly impacts the youth, on what he plans to do on law and justice, please let us know in the Q&A. And now we'll be moving on to education and student debt, which Vedant will be covering.
Yeah, so another major issue in America is college affordability and student debt. And Joe Biden plans to tackle this issue by mainly supporting historically Black colleges and universities, minority serving institutions, and community colleges. And so he will do this by making these historically Black colleges and universities and minority serving institutions free for those making less than $125,000 per year, and making 2-year community college programs free as well. So his plan mainly helps the youth by promoting diversity in the future workplace and academic world, as many of the youth that are in these colleges will grow up to find a stable job in the country. And it also helps the youth receive quality education at a lower cost, because he's supporting community colleges in such a drastic way. Other ideas that the Biden administration plans to enact are universal pre-K or pre-kindergarten for all students. And this will again put students at the right academic pace for their future studies. Because if students start with pre-K before they start their regular schooling, it'll make sure they're on track for what they're going to learn in the future. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Vedant. Thank you for speaking about all the way from 4-year-olds pre-K to students in university and the direct ways in which they'll be affected by education and student debt. And hopefully, as Vedant said, a lot of things the Biden administration will be very positive to help ease some of that stress that comes with student debt. And now we'll be moving on to the war on drugs, which City will be speaking about.
Often brushed under the rug and not addressed by our highest government officials is America's drug problem. In fact, in 2018, almost 68,000 Americans died from a drug overdose, almost 47,000 of which involved an opioid. Biden's policies show that he's willing to tackle these problems head on. In terms of our opioid crisis and substance abuse, Biden's policies include holding the big pharmaceutical companies accountable for their part in the crisis, and not treating those struggling with substance abuse as criminals, but instead making effective prevention, treatment, and recovery services. Additionally, Biden intends to stop the flow of illicit drugs from Mexico and China. Marijuana legalization is also a very important issue that Biden intends to address and not immediately come to conclusions. He wants to allow states to legalize recreational marijuana and legalize medical marijuana. He will encourage research into the effects of the drug and whether it's a gateway drug.
Thank you, City. So, as you said, marijuana has always been kind of a controversial topic, but you presented it exactly the way the Biden administration, you presented their stance on the war on drugs very clearly. So, thank you. And finally, I'll be speaking a bit about clean energy and the Biden administration stance on that. So, first, all of these points are taken from his campaign website. His first point listed there is to take executive action on day one. To immediately make progress on his climate agenda, Biden has stated that he will take actions including requiring methane pollution limits for new and existing oil and gas operations, developing high fuel economy standards to ensure that all new sales for vehicles will be zero emissions, and protecting our national grounds like wildlife parks and refuges by permanently protecting specifically the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge and other areas, and also banning new oil and gas leasing on public lands and waters. He also has stated that he'll work with other foreign countries because the United States accounts for only 15% of global emissions. So on day one, Biden will rejoin the Paris Climate Agreement, which, if for those of you who are not familiar with, is an agreement between multiple nations in an effort to reduce carbon emissions globally. And the Trump administration actually pulled out of the agreement. Biden has stated on day one he will rejoin that. And he's also stated specific steps he will take, such as engaging the leaders of major greenhouse gas emitting nations, such as China, America also, to persuade them to join the US to make more pledges for clean energy. The third point is he's stated that he'll invest over $400 billion in the span of 10 years in clean energy and innovation, and also establish ARPA-C, which is a new research agency focused on accelerating climate technologies. He also wants to work towards creating the most innovative clean technology and make sure that it's used by households and the industry in order to achieve major emission reductions. And he said that he set a target of reducing the carbon footprint of the US on global climate change by building stock 50% by 2035, creating incentives for deep retrofits, and also ensure that our agricultural sector, so farmers, are the first in the world to achieve net zero emissions while still earning fair income. And finally, the last, and I believe personally most important one, is creating around 10 million good paying middle class union jobs where the workers build American infrastructure and manufacture all the materials that go into it. So basically working for the environment instead of against it and still helping the economy. So that was just a lot of facts thrown at you, but what does all of that mean for us? Where, as Hassani also said in her slide, we're living in a world where climate change is a harsh reality, but the policies listed by Biden and what he will implement and when his term begins elaborate what all America can do from a national and global perspective to reduce our carbon footprint, invest in clean, renewable energy, and overall live in a cleaner and safer planet. So from our perspective, this is one of the most important issues that it seems Biden will do a good job addressing for our country. And now we've covered all of the topics we have to talk about for today, and we'll be moving on to the interactions and Q&A. So we already have gotten a couple questions. The first one is, what is the significance of America joining the Paris Climate Agreement again? And what does it mean for us as a country and the globe in general? And I think Hassani and myself talked about this specifically, but if anyone else has points, please feel free to add as well. Hassani?
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm talking about the climate agreement, right?
Yeah, Paris Climate.
I think that America joining the Paris Climate Agreement would be a good thing because now we have many countries working against climate change together and trying to limit carbon emissions. It means that the environment is taking more steps closer to having a safe environment. In 2017, Trump withdrew America from the Paris Climate Agreement to limit global carbon emissions, saying such restrictions would hurt the US economy.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I think so you said Trump withdrew in the beginning of his presidency, and what a lot of researchers are saying is that by him withdrawing, it reduces other countries' emission space. So basically, how much they're allowed to or is okay to emit carbon dioxide, and raises their emission costs. And also, the past 4 years, we've kind of refused to contribute to climate aid, and that makes it more difficult for developing countries, so third world countries, to mitigate and adapt to climate change. So I think rejoining will definitely help not only America, but the rest of the world as well. So our next question is, can you explain the reasoning of both pro-choice and pro-life when it comes to abortion? What exactly Biden sides with, the Biden-Harris administration, and what does that mean for us? And also the second part of that question is, what other options do we have if abortion in the future is made illegal? And I think Mahati, since you spoke about that, you can begin taking that one up.
Okay, so the main idea of like pro-life is that you're opposed to abortion and you just don't want it. And pro-choice is basically saying that you give the mother or a woman the choice to pick between an abortion or keeping it. And personally, the Biden and Harris administration is actually pro-choice, and they're not making it illegal, nor are they forcing you to get one. So, yes.
Also
you.
to add on to that, a lot of pro-life reasoning comes from like Christianity, especially like Southern Baptist Christianity, and most of that has to do with like a fetus being treated as a human, and most of the debate centers around that, whether like a fetus is a human or is it just a clump of cells. Also, yeah, abortion's extremely important, and also I just want to clarify, like pro-choice isn't pro-abortion, meaning that they don't necessarily support abortion, they just support access to it, and they support like having that freedom, and they don't really want to force abortion on anyone.
Yeah, definitely. You both made some really good points. And just to answer the second part of that question in more detail, just as a reminder, the second part was, what other options do we have if abortion in the future is made illegal? So I would say something we need to work on definitely is access to affordable birth control and contraceptives. But at the end of the day, it's a discussion between ideology and science. Also, as Mahati and Abhi said, between if a fetus is being treated as a clump of cells or as a living, breathing human. So a lot of things come into that: religion, medical ethics. So I don't think we can say for sure on this one. It's a never-ending argument, I feel. So our next question is, how will Biden's new healthcare plan impact middle-class American families? And it'd be great if whoever answers elaborates on teens specifically.
So I think that this impacts teens a lot because most teens are not like wealthy enough to afford their own healthcare. So they definitely have to like rely on their parents. And most people in the middle class, like healthcare costs, like if you go to a hospital or get a very major injury, they can reach up to like $50,000 or even $100,000. And most families in the United States, like the average middle class family, makes around $50,000 to $70,000 per year. So, under Biden Care, which is just an expansion of Obamacare, of course, it plans on making sure that co-pays aren't there, no premiums, no deductibles, and it's not going to be 100% paid for by the government, but a huge part of the government is going to be like they're the only payer. No other like mediators, no other insurance companies. And also a major part of that is a public option, meaning that they're not going to strip away your privatized insurance if you want it. And it's going to be more like you can pay into the system. Like if you want the system and if you want free healthcare, you're allowed to get it.
Yeah, definitely. If does anyone else want to take that up, or do you guys want to move on to the next question? So we can move on. Our next question is for Vedant, but again, as always, please jump in if you have an answer. Should we forgive all federal student loan debt, and why?
I think it depends on the student's position at that time. Um, like Joe Biden, like I said before, he plans to give loan forgiving to those who have an income below $125,000 annually. So I think it depends on the individual's income, their current situation, their current societal status, and how much they can afford to give at that position or at that time of being.
Yeah, that's fair. That makes a lot of sense. Also, definitely depends on where they are. But I think apart from making it easier for young adults to move on with their lives positively and some ways maybe improve their chances of having a better career and lifestyle, because let's take medicine for example. So once you go to residency, you're already not making much at all, and all paying off all the debt that you accumulate from undergrad and med school just kind of puts you couple years behind where you would be financially if you didn't have to pay off that debt. But apart from that, also research has shown that canceling all student debt can actually boost our economy, the American economy, by almost $100 billion, and lower the unemployment rate between almost 30% throughout the decade. So I think there's benefits for not only the students, but America as a whole. So I think that should be something that's considered for sure. So we have three more questions. So what have Harris and Biden stated in their policies and done for racial reform specifically? Anvita, you can take this one up. You can start off.
Yeah. So specifically Kamala Harris, after Jacob Blake's death, she went to Wisconsin and talked to her family and called Jacob Blake. And she actually pushed the investigation of investigating the officer that killed Jacob Blake. So yeah, in that way, she actually was for him, and she was trying to push racial equity to more further points.
Yeah, definitely. Also, I think something not related to police brutality that Harris has showed she supports racial equity as well in is that she's called for economic and educational investment in communities of color, uh, basically an end to chokeholds, which, if you don't know, is a type of police brutality, and carotid holds, and also create a database to track cops who use excessive force and break the rules. So yeah, definitely, you made some really important points under that. And our last
Also,
question.
to add to that, oh, wait, what? Oh, yeah. So to add to that, a lot of what she's going to do to reform education for BIPOC communities is all this comes from historical redlining practices, where like Black communities would have this little red line around them, and property prices there would like drop because there was like even one Black person there. And and how that ties into like racial inequity today in the education system is that a lot of school taxes are paid for by the local community's property tax. And since those homes are historically like low priced, that forces them the force like property tax is basically how much the property is worth. Like part of that's going to be deducted, right? So if the property is not worth that much historically, it's not going to be worth that much today. And what that creates is the system where the schools don't get enough funding and Black children don't have the chance to go to other schools because of zoning laws. And that creates an aura of like not a lot of like educationally advanced people. And that leads to a lot of poverty and crime in those communities.
Yeah. Also adding on to what Abhiram just said. Yeah, like I said before in my slide, Joe Biden, he does plan to support historically black colleges and universities by making them free for many people. So reducing that lack of education that Abhiram was talking about.
Yeah, Abhi, Vedant, and Anvita, you guys all said really important points on the racial equity aspect of it. So finally, our last question is for Siri. Um, China's economy and military power is increasing rapidly, especially in maritime areas such as the South China Sea. And basically, they're expanding their military presence. So, do Biden and Harris think it's in America's interest to prevent China from establishing control of these key maritime passageways? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, as you said, China is trying to increase its force on the surrounding areas. And Biden's stance on this issue is countering China requires strong democratic alliances. So our country will be able to get the upper hand by having a coalition of countries that are willing to fight back against China. In his own words, it'll be a democratic alliance to save the world. Also, Biden has taken a more confrontational stance by saying that he'd like to compel China to change its ways on trade, cyber theft, technology, and human rights.
Yeah, also, again, really great points. I think you covered pretty much everything. Um, but just to summarize, maybe that Joe Biden, they've stated that their administration would confront both Russia and China vigorously. Russia also because it's an expanding military force, and place pressure on China on the issue of its actions in the South China Sea. So I think those are all the questions we have. I don't think we have any more, so I think that's it for today. But please, if you're watching, if you have any questions, you can send them into either the YouTube live chat, the Facebook chat, or the Zoom chat, and we'll answer them.